Hello everyone, Professor Quizlook here. So I wanted to make a video thinking about and talking about the politics of public opinion. So when we think about democracy, when people talk about democracy, one of the first ideas that comes up is this idea of public opinion, of what people actually think, and then is what people want to happen happening. So let's spend some time thinking about the politics of public opinion and the political science around that. So the assumption is rather straightforward. In a democracy, government responds to what the people want. Elections exist to reflect public preferences, leaders track approval ratings, and the media constantly reports on what Americans think. You've undoubtedly heard articles being discussed, news stories on TV, people talking about what Americans think. So when we hear that, we're talking about and hearing about and reading about the politics of public opinion. So from our chapter 6, it talks about what exactly is public opinion and how much power does it really have. So public opinion, as we said, refers to the collective attitudes and beliefs that individuals hold about politics, including about specific issues, about governmental policies, maybe about political leaders themselves, and institutions. That definition sounds pretty simple, but it does hide some complexity. It actually might hide a lot of complexity. Public opinion is not one unified voice. It is fragmented, uneven, and at times contradictory. And understanding how it forms, how it is measured, and how it influences politics is essential for us to understand American democracy. So, one of the most important starting points is to recognize that most citizens do not have one sophisticated, one well-informed opinion on most political issues. And that is, of course, not a criticism of voters. It is just a reality of modern politics. Governments deal with thousands of policies, regulations, technical issues. The average citizen, no one really, has the time or even the incentive to master every single one of these issues that is dealing with government. Instead, political scientists describe public opinion as being shaped through political socialization. This is the process through which people acquire political values over the course of their lives. Family is often the earliest influence, shaping basic attitudes towards authority, fairness, ideology. Schools that we go to when we're children reinforce ideas about citizenship and political institutions. Peers that we hang out with, our friends that we choose to hang out with, influence our norms and identity. Religion, community, and the culture all matter in shaping our political views, our political ideology. Media also plays an especially powerful role, not just by providing information, but by framing political issues, deciding what is important, what is controversial, and what is normal. Importantly, socialization does not stop at childhood. Major political events, wars, economic crises, pandemics, social movements can shape attitudes, especially when they occur during formative years. So think about how the Great Recession shaped attitudes towards banks and inequality. The economic crises of 2008, 2009 drastically and dramatically shifted people's views about banks, inequality, the emergence of the 1% and we are the 99% came to the forefront. Alternatively, maybe a little bit more familiar to your lives, how the COVID-19 pandemic affected views on public health, on government authority, and trust in institutions. These experiences help explain why generations often differ politically. Even with these influences, many people remain what political scientists call low information citizens. Again, this is not designed to be critical of citizens. People are busy with their lives. People are busy just trying to go about their lives. So this does not mean that citizens are necessarily disengaged or unintelligent. It means people rely on shortcuts or heuristics, which political scientists, sociologists, psychologists talk about heuristics, to make sense of politics. Party identification is one of those most powerful shortcuts. If you know how your party positions itself on an issue, you can form an opinion without deep policy knowledge, maybe about every specific policy being discussed, or about a political candidate, or even an elected official. Other shortcuts include endorsements from trusted figures, cues from media outlets, and signals from social networks. These shortcuts make participation possible, but they also make public opinion more vulnerable to distortion or polarization. This brings us to the measurement of public opinion, primarily through polling. Polls have become a central feature of American politics. Undoubtedly, you have heard stories about, again, this policy has a 50% approval rating, or Donald Trump has an X, Y, or Z approval versus disapproval rating. You've probably heard this. Your friends have probably talked about it. Your family talks about it. These numbers are captured through polling. So polling results, polling data influence campaigns, media coverage, and policy making. But polls are not simply passive reflections of what people think. They are instruments, and their design matters. Polling accurately, so to poll accurately depends on sampling. A poll must accurately reflect population it claims to represent. It depends on question wording, which can subtly or not so subtly push respondents in certain directions. It also depends on timing, especially during rapidly evolving events like elections, protests, maybe international crises. So, for example, asking whether the government should increase spending on welfare often produces different results than asking whether it should increase assistance to the poor. The policy is similar, the framing, how the question is framed, how the policy is framed, is not similar. This tells us something important. Public opinion is oftentimes sensitive to language, not just substance. Polls often, polls also influence opinion in return. When people hear that most Americans support or most Americans oppose something, they may adjust their own views. This is known as the bandwagoning effect. Polls don't just measure opinion, they help create the political environment in which opinions form. Public opinion also varies by issue. On high salience issues, those people care deeply about and encounter frequently, opinions tend to be more stable and influential. Presidential approval ratings, major wars, inflation, gas prices fall into this category. On low salience or highly technical issues, public opinion is oftentimes vague, unstable, or maybe even non existent. This helps explain why policymakers sometimes appear responsive to public opinion and sometimes appear to simply ignore it. When opinion is clear, intense, and politically mobilized, leaders are more likely to pay attention. While When opinion is weak or fragmented, other actors, interest groups, bureaucracies, party leaders, oftentimes dominate. This leads to one of the central questions of Chapter 6 from the OpenStax textbook. Does public opinion shape policy, or does public policy shape public opinion? In reality, the relationship works in both directions, but not equally. Often, elites act first, and public opinion adjusts later. This is especially true when policies are complex or framed as necessary responses to crises. Consider examples like national security surveillance after 9/11, emergency public health measures during COVID-19, or financial bailouts during economic crises. In many cases, leaders acted quickly, justified their actions, and public opinion followed, sometimes reluctantly, sometimes enthusiastically. Another major force shaping public opinion today is media, especially social media. Traditional media still matters, but digital media has transformed how people encounter political information. Algorithms curate content based on prior behavior, reinforcing existing beliefs and creating ideological echo chambers. This has consequences. It increases polarization, it accelerates misinformation, it makes public opinion louder and more emotionally charged, but not necessarily more informed. At the same time, social media lowers barriers to participation. People can express opinions, mobilize others, and challenge elites more easily than ever before. People can connect, share stories, share their grievances in a way that couldn't be done when there were more gatekeepers. So this does create, though, a paradox. Public opinion is more visible than ever, but not necessarily more influential. Another key insight from Chapter 6 is that public opinion is not evenly weighted in politics. Policymakers tend to respond more to people who vote, who donate, organize, and show up for political events. This means the opinions of politically active groups often carry more weight than the opinions of disengaged citizens. This does create an uncomfortable tension. In theory, democracy values equality. In practice, influence often follows participation. This helps explain why some policies persist even when they are unpopular with large segments of the population, and why others gain traction quickly when they mobilize active constituencies. Despite all of these limitations, public opinion still matters deeply. It matters because it sets boundaries. Leaders cannot govern entirely against sustained public opposition. Strong public backlash can block legislation, end political careers, and force policy reversals. Even when leaders do not follow public opinion directly, they are constrained by it. Public opinion also matters because it evolves. Attitudes towards same sex marriage, marijuana legalization, and interracial marriage have changed dramatically over time. These shifts created political space for legal and institutional change. In that sense, public opinion acts less like a steering wheel and more like a current, slow moving but powerful. Ultimately, public opinion is not a single voice. It is a contested arena where information, identity, and power and participation intersect. Understanding public opinion means understanding who speaks, who listens, and whose voice matters most. So, as you think about politics as we work our way through the rest of the text, be skeptical when leaders claim that they act on the will of the people. Ask instead, Which people? Measured how? Influenced by what? And under what conditions? How do we know that that is what people want? Those questions sit at the heart of the politics of public opinion and at the heart of American democracy itself. Thank you.